South Africa is in massive debt. Our debt is about 4.8 trillion.
The country has started preparing for a tough few years ahead after the finance minister laid out South Africa's tough financial path yesterday.
Now, what's important to note is debt can be a good thing if it's used wisely. However, our 4.8 trillion debt has been used to bail out entities like Eskom that just are not working. Our finance minister in South Africa said that our debt is swelling up by more than 550 billion per year. For the next 2 years, we should be reaching about 6 trillion. That's in 2027. This will push the debt-to-GDP ratio to 77%, the highest it has ever been in South Africa's history. In 1994, it was around 50%, the debt-to-GDP ratio. It reached a low of 23% in 2009. Unfortunately, since then, it's been downhill. Now, debt can be a good thing, but in South Africa's case, our debt is going down the drain. We're literally getting debt just to be able to fund corrupt officials that steal this debt back from the country. The question is the ANC government using the debt productively? Theoretically, a government should only borrow money to invest in infrastructure, to stimulate and boost economic growth. However, our debt is being borrowed to loot it out in Eskom, where the infrastructure is still not working. We still don't have the electricity, although the government keeps borrowing money. The increase in growth when you borrow money should result in higher tax revenues, which should then be used to repay back the growth or the debt that we've actually been taking. Unfortunately, this doesn't happen in South Africa. In 2009, South Africa's GDP was 2.3 trillion. We've tripled to 6.7 trillion in 2023. This means our GDP is growing by 200% in the last 15 years and about 7% every single year. The investment thereof did not lead to any significant economic growth. So literally, our debt is just getting bigger, yet there's no growth that we're seeing. The question is, what did the government spend the money on? It was certainly not spent on improving electricity and logistics infrastructure, as Transnet has literally fallen off, Eskom is falling off. Very little investment was in basic service delivery and infrastructure, such as water and sewage, as literally people died in Hammanskraal. We don't have functioning water. Most cities and towns are literally water shedding. We have a huge issue. Our government keeps borrowing more money, and yet nothing is being done. The finance minister announced that spending cuts of 21 billion are going to be introduced in the next financial year. This represents less than 1% of the total expenditure budget. The planned cuts for 2025 and 2026 are 64 to 69 billion. And this actually equates to only 3% of total expenditure. As you can see, the debt is growing. The cuts are literally so small. We're just getting more and more into debt. Literally, it's like drawing up a toothpick in a gunfire. That's what our government is doing. Now, if you look at Cyril Ramaphosa's regime, they have failed to do any infrastructure or economic growth projects. Literally, they're just taking more debt and it's going down the drain. Our economy is depressed and we have a mountain of debt to repay. Not only do we need to make the budget smaller by getting rid of frivolous expenditure, we need a whole new administration. You can't have a government that keeps borrowing more and more money, yet what they're doing with it, they're wasting it. Let me actually break it down so it makes sense to you. This is the equivalent of somebody taking debt to buy alcohol. Every single year, they take on more and more debt. Every single month, they take on more and more debt. And with that debt, they get drunk. The next morning, more debt, they get drunk. The next morning, more debt, and they get drunk. This is what our government is literally doing. It's borrowing more money at high interest rates, and it's just using that money to waste it. And you and I, as young people, when we start getting involved in the economy, our VAT, our taxes, we're literally using that money to pay back the debt. We're not growing as an economy. We don't have infrastructure projects. We don't have water projects. We're literally moving backwards as a country. It becomes important that in 2024, we vote for the right government that will bring in infrastructure projects that will literally help stimulate our economy and not waste our money as a nation on paying back debt and getting more and more debt on things that are not working, on systems that are not growing our country. We're in trouble as a nation when our debt keeps growing and our GDP is not catching up. We're not able to actually pay back our debt. We're in crisis. And it's important that we vote wisely in 2024. We vote for Arise South Africa, because what we will do is ensure that government spending is used to grow the economy so that we can recover more and finish paying off this debt and begin to grow our economic situation. We're in trouble. We need to save our nation. Vote wisely to save our country.